Okay. We on? I don't know. Okay. Good evening and welcome to the February 11th, 2026 Scarborough Town Council Ordinance Committee meeting. I will call this meeting to order and I will note that we have a full ordinance committee this evening with Councillor Donovan, Councillor Anderson, and myself, Councillor Shoup. We will first do the approval of the minutes from our January 14th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. No new business, and so we will jump into new business. And first on our agenda this evening is to consider amendments to Chapter 1018, the Cannabis Establishment Licensing Ordinance, and Chapter 311, Schedule of Fees. And I believe we have, are you doing this, Liam? We'll have Liam introduce this.
Sure, thank you. So the background to this this agenda item was discussed during council goal setting, an interest in looking at the current ordinance, which essentially is a 5-strike or 5-chance stipulation in the ordinance around odor complaints. And it really hinges on verified odor complaints. This is the standard that was adopted back in July of 2024 after much wrangling of this issue. Since that time, again, I'm over a year and a half of experience. There's been 15 odor complaints. All of them have been confirmed. And the distinction I would make is that a resident, a butter, contacted the police department, which is the process that's required, informed them that they were detecting cannabis odor beyond the property boundary. A police officer was dispatched at whatever time they're able to do so. And they confirmed that they also smelled cannabis odor again, which confirmed an odor violation and an ordinance violation. The challenging part has been when the officer is tasked with investigating the source of that odor. That's been the challenge. And so of the 15 reports, only 4 in some level were verified. One of those I would flag was overturned at the Zoning Board of Appeals. So essentially there's only been 3 verified complaints to date. So, that's a 20% success rate. So even though the odor's been confirmed, attributing it to a certain licensee or facility has been the challenge. And so based on that, there's a suggestion during the town council discussion that we should look at the 5 strikes and perhaps reduce that to 3 strikes. So I said that's the background.
I have a couple clarifying questions before we open up to public comment, and I don't know if you guys do either, but I think, how many cultivators do we have in town? Is that cultivators, people growing?
I don't know offhand. I would say probably a dozen licenses at this point. Again, generally concentrated within 3 areas of town. There's the Pine Point area. There is also the industrial area in Washington Ave. And then there's this area over off of Pleasant Hill. So those are the 3 concentrations. 17 licenses.
And so I know that there are issues with who we are attributing the smell to, but are we getting calls throughout the town that we're getting smells? Like I know we were having issues down at the co-op. So I'm just kind of curious where the calls are coming from.
So to date, all 15 reports have come from a single area of town.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, so for the 15 that have come in that we can't verify, is it because there's multiple licensees in a single building and it's hard to distinguish within a building?
There's 2 cultivation operators within a very close proximity. So 3 Commercial Road, 4 Commercial Road, that's all public information. There also has been, I don't know the status now, but there also were some licensed cultivators further down Pleasant Hill Road. I don't expect that they're the source of this odor, given the proximity to the abutters, but that's been, I think, the challenge. I know that when we had some concerns in the Pine Point industrial overlay, there was a high concentration of licenses within a singular facility. This one is licenses in 2 separate facilities.
But like next to each other. So the issue is the police officer can't say it's this building or that building because they're just unable to verify which one.
I think the reluctance has been to definitively attribute it to one facility or one address over the other because it can be so fleeting.
Yeah. One of the things I thought we did in the ordinance oh, I know we did, was we made it so that the landowners had to get some sort of license. So I don't know, as we talk about this, like, where does that come into play in terms of verification? Like, if it's that landowner owns both of those two buildings, we can verify that there's an issue with that landowner's buildings.
Mhm.
And so where does that come into play in terms of, you know?
I believe they're
accountability?
separate building owners. So
they are.
separate owners, yep. Separate owners, separate businesses, separate licenses.
So that makes it even more difficult.
Right, correct.
I do have more questions on verifying, but I don't know if we should open up to public comment.
Reading council.
I think let's keep asking questions in case.
Go
the-
ahead, because
Yeah, no, I'm asking, I think
I think
because
it's good to allow the public to hear.
I guess, if, I'm being told that there were at least 6 times the police came out and they smelled it, but they were unsure of the protocol. So I think some of the residents are feeling like I would have 6 if protocol was followed. I don't know what the protocol is. To be honest, I know that they have a protocol and that they follow it. And so I think one of the questions is there a process of elimination? If you have 2 buildings, are they just going out and being like, oh, we don't smell it? Or are they actually doing a full inspection on the 2 buildings and going, neither of these buildings? Does the ordinance call for that?
The ordinance certainly doesn't prescribe the investigatory process.
Okay.
I do know that once this was adopted, I know that we had a few issues with sort of an inconsistent investigation
Right.
where some officers would, and again, a lot of this, I'm not making excuses, but is dependent on how much available, this is not a high priority call for them. But I do think at this point, there's a good understanding that you verify that there is a ordinance violation. So they actually detect cannabis, whether it's at the residence of the individual who called to report it or any other part that's beyond the property line. And then they are driving around to the 2 known facilities that have cannabis cultivation to see if they can ascertain, yes, I clearly smell, there's an air exhaust here. It smells of cannabis. There's a general inspection around, what are the atmospheric conditions, wind direction, temperature, humidity, things like that. Some are more thorough than others, to be honest. And some, frankly, I think there are probably some that have come around and done a quick walk around, got back in their cruiser and said, I just can't tell, and I have other priorities that stat calls. So I think that's the reality of it.
Which is understandable. I think there was a question around, can we try to do a little more investigating, or is it possible to just ticket the 2 buildings and say, someone has to take responsibility for the fact that it just smells so much? And I think that's some of the clarification that was looking for from the residents. But that's, the discretion of the police.
Are the same homes bringing the complaints? Are they experiencing this over and over, or is it different people in the neighborhoods?
My understanding is that the reports are generally from a singular residence. However, they're not the only individuals within the neighborhood that have smelled it. Again, some of that's anecdotal. I have no reason to question the validity there, but the reports are largely coming from an immediate abutter. And I think part of that is just the fact of where their home is located in proximity to the facility and how the wind sort of works. It's kind of runs right down across the facility and into their backyard. So that's the, as I understand it.
Is the technology such that the operators of these facilities have the ability to essentially eliminate the odor?
I believe that the technology exists. Again, I think we've really, when all of the odor concerns came forward, we were dealing with a different facility in a different part of town. I think my understanding is that that landlord has really done a phenomenal job working with their licensees and their businesses to better manage those concerns. So I think the short answer is yes, the technology and how you design your building does exist to eliminate odor, but every facility has some challenges.
I don't know. I'm curious how long the smell complaints have been going on in that neighborhood. If this has been like from the minute you allowed cultivation in the town of Scarborough, have the residents in that neighborhood been complaining, or has it only been more recently?
I don't have that data in front of me. I do know, again, 2023, 2024, when we developed the current process, It wasn't the primary concern, but it was a documented concern of cannabis odor going back years. So no, I don't think it's not new since 2024. It's been an articulated concern for a while. But it was different than the other area of town, certainly.
So just kind of hearing the situation, one of my concerns about whether we went from 5 to 3, we still have the same problem that we can't verify. And so I'm wondering if there's a different solution to ultimately holding people accountable, where maybe it's not verify, but like, you know, if a police officer confirms, those landowners, whether it's 2, 3, 4, whoever, should be notified that there's a violation. And if it's 5, then it's a problem for all of them until we can figure out who's actually doing, or which one is actually causing the issue. I just don't know. I'm just trying to think of like, if we went from 5 to 3, I don't know if it's going to change the situation.
That's where I was hoping to have the police chief here to have a discussion about how we could maybe better verify, where I'm saying, go knock on 4, go knock on 3, go knock on 2, 1. Be like, I want to inspect you, or we're going to say that it's you. I mean, I mean, obviously you can't do that, but you know, if they're all in one building, you just kind of say, okay, you figure it out amongst yourself. And so I think we don't want to keep calling the police and having them out there for the same issue. And so I don't know if and I don't know I don't want to tell the police how to do their job, but I think there is also a lack of calling because people don't want to burden the police with a non-emergency issue constantly. And so when I'm hearing, I'm not calling, I'm not
get your
calling.
point. Because I was thinking the same thing, was we go from 5 to 3, well, is that gonna ever really deter them? Or is this just gonna continue? You know, most of the time, people can't, the police can't identify where it is. And so the neighborhood that it's impacted by this continues to be impacted. So I'm kind of, if we could find a way, I mean, mandating that a certain level of performance on their systems to maintain control.
Part of me is thinking, maybe is it more, if there's a location where we can confirm 10 confirmations, which is a higher bar because it can't verify, do those licenses in that vicinity need to come to the council for a hearing to see if we can like have a conversation with those landowners to say, what is the problem? If you guys can't solve this, we're going to revoke your license, because 10 confirmations of marijuana getting out, while it's not to verify. I'm just trying to think of like how to bring people to the table to say, you have a problem. We know you have a problem. We don't know which one of you. And if we can't figure it out, we're going to be in a position where we're going to have to revoke licenses, which we don't want to do. So where's the problem, and can we fix it? And how can staff in preparation for that, you know, do the right due diligence within the vicinity or the facilities to say, we're going to come in and we're going to look at everything again, and we're going to make sure. And if we can find what the issues are, we can try and solve it. I don't know, but going from 5 to 3, like I was supportive of doing that, but I'm hearing, I don't think it's going to change the situation.
Well, I think that's why I want to have more of a discussion on how we're verifying, because I feel like if we maybe make it clear or maybe expand how we're verifying, maybe we would be able to get 3. I think that's how some of the residents feel, I will say, is I think that's their feeling, like if we maybe do a little more verifying, that we'd be able to get them.
And I wonder whether I would support the idea of going 5 to 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great start.
And I was contemplating the idea of, well, why not 2? Because you told them this is a problem.
Yeah.
Clean up your filtration system. But I'm wondering if there are other ways that they would have to appear before fill in the blank.
Right.
So that they could be questioned as to, why are you a repeat violator? What's the deal with this? So which is kind of this idea that what else is available to
Right.
us
Mhm.
to try and, right this homeowner. Because for the homeowner, it's a real problem.
Yeah,
So just because I heard a few comments, I just want to make sure, because it's been a while since we talked about this, just to Counselor Donovan's comment about, we actually do prescribe filtration standards for all of our cultivation facilities. So that was something that we did a while ago. So there are some standards that everyone has to follow that we verify. And then, you know, the other comment I'd say is that I think through the change in zoning, and again, there's some legacy use that's been provided, but I think in general, the council's sentiment behind the 1,000-foot residential buffer was to say, this industry can and has been problematic with proximity to residential dwellings. And so all of, you know, these facilities in particular are operating with that legacy use. So just, these are things that we've talked about a lot over the last 5 years, and the council has taken other steps to try to mitigate these concerns.
well, that's where I'm trying to get out of, like, if we can confirm it, but we can't verify it, but it's more than 3 in a location, what is the recourse that we could say to that location to say, you need to come to the council, and now the burden of proof is on you guys to show us that you're all doing the right stuff, and if they can't, could that be grounds for us to potentially revoke a license? And I hate the idea of having to, like, force, you know, if there are 3 people in 3 facilities and we can't verify, having 2 of them have to come who are not clearly doing the right thing. I would think they should have an easy time coming to justify and show us that they're doing the right thing. And again, if we can figure out who the violator is, then the council can either decide whether we need to go down the revoke path or other measures we want to put in place to make sure that they fix it. So I'm not saying we just straight revoke it. I'm just saying, like, how do we use the council as a body to say, there's a problem. Now we need you guys to help show us that it's not you who's the problem, so that we can either find the issue and fix it, or revoke the license if we need to.
Right. Why don't we do public comment? I think we've
Yes.
thrown out a couple ideas that we can get into during discussion, but why don't we open this now up to public comment? So if there's anyone that would like to make a comment in regards to this, please, you're welcome to come up to the podium. You have 3 minutes, and please direct your comments through me. I don't know if there's anyone online.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jill Cohen. I'm an attorney at Verrill. I represent cannabis businesses, including 3 Commercial Road, 4 Commercial Road. I am our cannabis group's practice chair, so this is all I do. And I've been working in Scarborough since 2017. So I've been along for the ride as Scarborough has struggled the whole way through. And so I am not without empathy for how difficult this is. And I know some of you have been present for testimony from my client, particularly at 3 Commercial. Just to give you some perspective, and I'm not pointing the finger at one or the other of the facilities, 4 Commercial is small. It's a 2,000 square foot grow. So that's a tier 2 grow. At 3 Commercial, they have cultivation. I don't know the exact square footage. It was reduced by 2 licenses that you may remember were not issued based on the 1,000-foot residential buffer. So there is less cultivation at 4 Commercial than there has been in the past. They also do manufacturing, which is in a very controlled, I was there the other day, very controlled environment. I looked at the odor complaints. So a couple of things I want to point out, and this is by no means making any excuses. I just want to give you a little bit of perspective. When I look at 2024, September, right after the ordinance went into place, and Chair, I'm going to go a little bit over if that's okay. I'm watching the clock and it's stressing me out. So the complaints that came in 2024, 2 of them, one was on 9/23, one was on 9/24. So we have another instance of that the following September, and I'm going to talk about why September is relevant. So in 2025, we had 3 complaints come in September 19th, 20th, 21st. So odor is generated during specific times of the cultivation cycle. And other people here can speak to that more directly, but during harvest. And so it's not all year round. So you will see when you look at the complaints, clustered dates. So when you're talking about, and let's use 2025 as an example, because that was a full year. So 11 complaints in 2025, they all but one came from the same address. That's fine. It doesn't really matter where the complaints came from, but all but one came from the same address. The last verified complaint we had was August 20th of 2025. So in a 365-day year, and you put it in perspective that way, I know the problem feels big, and when you're accountable to the electorate, it feels really big because you're hearing from abutters and other residents who are concerned. So the problem, I believe, was successfully tackled at the snow canning facility. We have no complaints coming from there. There apparently is work to be done on Commercial Road. So I can tell you at 3 Commercial, a lot of time, money, and expense has gone into upgrading their odor mitigation systems. 4 Commercial, like I said, small grow, very well contained over there. Like I said, I'm not saying one or the other is always the source. A couple of things I thought of when I talked to the guys at 4 Commercial, who, by the way, have been there since 2016. 3 Commercial has been a cannabis facility since 2013. So also to give you some perspective there. There is, Liam referenced it, a wind tunnel that comes through Commercial Road. It may be even helpful if you all want to one day to come do a site visit, because depending on the wind and weather conditions, that's what's pushing it towards the residential space. So unfortunately, it takes this combination of things that come together that create this problem. It's not an everyday problem. It's not even every month problem. But when these things align and the wind goes a certain way between 3 and 4 Commercial, it will land on Pondview Drive. One of the things that keeps coming up, and when we talked originally about tasking law enforcement with this, I raised the concern that this was always going to be a lower priority for them. And, to ask them to step away from burglaries and injured people, to deal with an odor complaint, it's never going to be at the top of their priority list. However, one thing that has come up is they could maybe use some more training. And we're willing at 3 and 4 Commercial to have anybody that wants to come over to do a walk around, to look at opportunities there, to understand how they might actually be able to verify when they come out. And we're happy to help. This ordinance has changed a few times over the years. And I remember being here in 2023 and 2024 saying, just give it time, it'll work. I'm here tonight to say that as well. Give it time, it'll work. It's already working. We've got one facility fully under control. We've got to get things under control on Commercial Road. That will happen. They're committed to it. I know some of you met Chris McNeil, very earnest in his desire. He gave his cell phone number to the abutters. I've spoken to one of the abutters. So they're willing to do anything, and they're willing to have you all come in and see so that everyone has an educated perspective on what our options are. So all that to say, those are my ideas about it, just to sort of give you some perspective. We really are talking about 11 out of 365 days. I know we can find a solution short of revoking licenses, and we're happy to work with you to do that.
Thank you. Is there anyone online? Anyone else? Okay. We will close public comment. Thank you. So I mean, I guess my first reaction is we have no complaints across the whole town. I don't have anyone else from any other businesses here saying, don't do this. I don't, my understanding is we have 0 calls from Pine Point. I drive by there, I'm not smelling it anymore. So to me, there is a solution. It was solved by one of the users, and we seem to be having a problem somewhere else. And so, I mean, to me, we've shown that you can operate this with 0 smell, is how I feel. And so I feel like we've given a lot of time and effort for people to try to work through things. And so while I appreciate that, And, I really want to make sure it's represented that, the neighbors complaining, they've been kind of elected as like their representative. So I mean, these neighbors may be the only ones calling, but they're also talking to their neighbors, like going outside saying, do you smell it? I smell it. Well, I'm gonna call. So I think, and they're also smelling it more than I think they're calling. And so I think that's part of the issue is we have residents who don't want to burden the police, so they're not calling every time, despite you and us telling them, call every time, they're still not, which you can't blame them because they don't want to keep burdening. So I don't know if we want to change it down to 2. And just say, I mean, to me, this is a problem. This is not an industry problem.
And if we went from 5 to 3, that means they get 2 strikes without any consequence, right?
Mhm.
And it's only the 3rd one that
Mhm.
brings it in. Whereas,
There would be a notice of violation. There would be a notice violation and a potential penalty or fine for that, for the first strike, second strike. It's only after the 5th occurrence, then it comes back for a hearing for a suspension or revocation. So there's still a consequence. It's just not the significant consequence.
I mean,
it seems to me we ought to get on top of it. This is a
Mhm.
problem that's repeating itself in the neighborhood. And I don't want to penalize these people who are running this business, but on the other hand, you can't run a business where the next door neighbor is constantly smelling an odor that is distasteful to it.
Mhm.
Not fair. So
they've
we
raised
need
concerns
a
about their
solution.
property value as well.
Yeah, because you
which
have
I
to disclose
appreciate.
it on the sale.
Yeah, and I know that they've been cultivating there since 2013, but it hasn't been since 2013 that they've smelled it. So I think that's what the change is for them as well, is the residents there don't care what's going on in the commercial, they just don't want to smell it. And so they weren't up until the last, I don't know how many years, but it hasn't been since 2013. So I mean, whoever was in there before was operating without smells. I don't think it's wrong to say after 2 strikes, you need to at least come to council. I
Yes.
mean, if you guys want to keep it at 3, I understand that, but I also feel like dealing with a very direct issue.
I was thinking the same thing, that if you have a second violation, you're gonna have to come before us and we'll have the range of options that we have.
Mhm.
But we're not gonna be unfair about it.
No.
But I think they need to know
Mhm.
they have control over it. And I heard that weather can affect it, but
Mhm.
I think the system that you install can largely eliminate it.
I feel like we're trying to use an ordinance to solve a problem when there's clearly a problem, but it's with one area. And so I'm just trying to myself think like, if that's what we're trying to solve, I don't know if modifying the ordinance is gonna solve it. I feel like it's a matter of as the commenter said, like we need to get those owners into a council meeting immediately or at some point and say, guys, we have a problem. We're willing to try and work with you. Can't work with you. I don't know what authority we have to say we're gonna go down the path of revoking licenses if we can't solve this problem immediately. Personally, I always felt like 5 was too much, so like putting that aside, I would go down to 3 if we wanted to recommend to council to go to 3. I think 3 is fine. But I don't think that's gonna solve the problem. I think we have to,
Can we go to 3, but then is there a way to say, figure it out amongst yourselves, 2 buildings? Like we can't, like I know if you're operating within the same building, we're saying we're just finding the building. Is there a way to change the ordinance to say if we smell it within a certain area of a facility, there's some responsibility? I mean, I don't want to target the wrong business.
yeah.
You know what I mean, though? And like, that's the worst thing, is to end up having the wrong business before us and having them incur all that.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge. I think someone already commented that, if you're trying to, if our position is we're not really sure who's responsible, but someone's responsible and it's a problem and therefore we're holding everyone accountable. I don't know how defensible that might be, because clearly there's someone who's responsible, and you penalize someone who very likely isn't.
Yeah.
Again, that's why we went with the registration when we were talking about multiple licenses, because we recognized that we couldn't attribute the source of the odor to a single licensee when the building had 10 licenses. So that's why we went with the registration process. This is a bit of a different scenario. In terms of the process, again, in the event, whatever the threshold is, 3 strikes, 5 strikes, that requires a hearing before the council to discuss the suspension or revocation or take no action. But that's where obviously that dialogue would, that conversation would happen. And I think some of the larger context and the record would probably come into play.
I guess I think if the goal for tonight is to move something to council around the 3 versus 2,
Mhm.
I would say I'm comfortable going either way, 3 or 2. I think 5 is too much, so I think we should do that. I just want to make sure that we also have a clear plan of what we're going to do with 3 and 4 Commercial Road outside of that, to make sure they work with town staff or however we need to, because I appreciate Jill coming tonight, but we're here because there's a problem for the properties you represent. And I see Shelley next to you, and I hate that you feel like you have to be here because you're doing a great job. And so hopefully you can share whatever you're doing with Jill tonight and make sure that they can learn. But I feel like there's something there that needs to happen.
Yeah.
That I don't want to just change the ordinance. I want to see some action with those in those buildings to come to council, and again, not to be punitive, but more to be like, guys, like, we want to work with you. We got to fix this. Like, there's a problem. What have you done? Why can't you fix it? Why does it keep happening? Shouldn't be happening at all. And make sure that they have that opportunity to tell us what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think for tonight, at a minimum, we should move forward with a reduction in the complaints. I was curious, do some towns have like a nuisance ordinance? Like, I was asking, the good neighbor ordinance doesn't deal with smells, but is there like do some towns have ordinances that are like a nuisance? So like if they smell something that is just atrocious, that they can call on that?
Some do. I know that again, I'm dating myself, it's been a few years, but I know, for instance, I think even the city of Portland had, again, I forget what it was characterized as, but it was actually in response to, I think, a food manufacturing, either chicken or fish processing plant, and there were some stipulations around that. But, again, as we've talked about for years now, I mean, the problem with odor is that I think we have solved the lingering odor that goes on for hours. I don't think we have a lot of that anymore ever. I think that it can be very fleeting, and it can be, and again, I don't want to put her on the spot, but my understanding is that some of the issues in another part of town was, just carelessly leaving a door open with some product, and if the conditions are right, it will really carry. So your question, yes, I think others do have it. I'm not sure. Again, it's invisible. It can come and go. It's really, really challenging. There is, one other thing we did talk about years ago was there are measurement devices. They're somewhat costly. It requires training, but to have an objective measurement of odor, that is also possible. It's just something that we've not pursued for all those challenges.
Well, I mean, we could raise the fee and get an odor machine if we keep having odor problems. Just one suggestion.
Yeah, it's exceedingly difficult.
Yeah.
As was mentioned, you need specialized training, specialized equipment that needs to be calibrated. Weather conditions need to be factored in. So it's exceedingly difficult to ever get to the point of identifying the origin of a smell. And then there needs to be some threshold that they've exceeded. So the good neighbor ordinance really kind of flirts all around those issues around light and noise. Noise can be equally difficult. There are decibel meters, but there again, all those external factors come into play. And just if I could, I think this is an imperfect approach, and we're really asking our officers to do something that's very difficult. But I think having a verified complaint by a reasonable person is really a standard that you need to adhere to, as opposed to some other standard. Because at the end of the day, these licenses afford the ability to make money. It's a business operation, and if we ever get to the point of revocation, I'll be recommending that we need to have solid evidence to prove that there was a violation. And anything short of verification, and even that might be challenged, but I think that's a challenge we would consider, is really thin ice in my opinion. So I'm pleased to hear that you've kind of staying with the verified language, as imperfect as it may be. I think it's the best we can do given the circumstances.
Since these are state regulated uses, is the state silent on, you know, you're operating a cultivating business and you can smell, not smell, you have to have a filtration that doesn't, like, are there state regulations around that?
We have an expert in the room. My understanding is that there's no odor regulations on state licensing.
Okay.
Correct?
I mean, if you want to, I just, you know, and that's not, I'm curious, like, if we're missing something,
I'm not aware that any of the state laws speak to
Okay.
that. They leave it to local jurisdictions to
Yeah.
decide what they want.
It's mostly left for local
Okay.
enforcement. However, for cultivators, there is a part on their plan of record where they do talk about odor mitigation, but I've been on a lot of inspections and it's generally not the focus of the Office of
Right.
Cannabis
Okay.
Policy.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we should move forward with this. It's up to you guys if you want to do 2 or 3. I personally feel like I don't think it's wrong after 2 violations to bring someone before us. You know, I think, you know, we had 4 violations, but then they went before the ZBA and had one thrown out. So I mean, this has been tolling on our staff, our
Mhm.
town. And so I think,
Yeah, especially because we can be the judge, fair body of 7 people hearing the presentations by the parties before us, what the appropriate remedy is.
Mhm.
So I think 2 is a good number.
I'm fine with 2. Before we move on though, can we talk about the email we got from John Burke and the fees? I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but I was just curious for staff if you guys had anything to say in response to that, because I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think we have a few thoughts. I think Attorney Burke raises a number of good points. I think that, you know, the way our ordinance is constructed now, we do have some again, speaking to manufacturing, so setting aside cultivation, that's a whole different manufacturing. We do have at least a few facilities in operation now. I think we've had one that's wound down that is largely doing the same thing within the same space. But they operate within the medical industry and the adult use industry. And I think him raising questions about how much additional time does that take on staff and should we have multiple licenses? I mean, I think that's probably a good conversation to have. I think that, you know, his other commentary, again, this isn't new either. I think Attorney Burke's raised a number of these concerns right along through. But the suggestion of what is the staff time and commitment to properly license these facilities and are the fees commensurate with that time? I think that we'd probably be open to, again, now having 5 and 6 years of experience, what does it take for relicensing or renewals? You know, should we look at our fee structure? I think there are a number of good points that we probably won't be able to work through tonight, but I think we're receptive to some of them.
right.
Would you be prepared to make a recommendation to us in the future?
I think in the future, we're happy to provide some thoughts. I don't want to speak for the clerk, that she obviously have a large role in that as well, but I think we could offer some thoughts in terms of the ideas that he suggested.
Okay.
I would just think part of what we're doing is moving
Right.
the fees, and so if we're gonna move them, I would prefer to move them with your guys' recommendation on what they should actually be versus just moving them, and so.
Right.
Well, so that was not part of.
Can I just
Yeah.
correct a little bit?
Okay.
So the original, sorry, I'm been sick. So tonight, what was being proposed to you isn't any adjustment to the numbers. It's essentially cleaning up some stuff. We've
Yeah.
been taking fees out of every ordinance and putting them in chapter 311. So we have one place for all the fees and directing the ordinance to that chapter. So that's essentially what is in front of you tonight, was not a change of fees or anything. As far as looking at the fees, Liam and I talked a little bit about this today. I don't have a time frame on how long it takes us, because it's not just me. It's me. I have my deputy helping me. Fire is involved. Police is involved. Codes and planning is involved. Liam is involved in some of these. So I don't know without gauging from every single person who's involved and what that actually looks like. I can tell you, I spend a decent amount of time scheduling inspections, going around everyone's schedule, hearing from this one and they can't do it. There is a lot that goes into them. I think the only recommendation I would have when it comes to fees, would possibly be amending the application fee. All town clerk licenses have a $50 application fee. For first-time applicants, we just made that change instead of all applications. So you could, if you wanted to change something, you could probably take that application fee away. Because right now they're paying it every time they renew their license or whether their initial. That being said, though, it's a hefty amount that the town would lose for revenue. So that's just something to keep in mind as well.
But to the letter's point, like I want to make sure that what we're charging is commensurate with the activity, which sounds like it is a lot. The question is it what's currently being charged? And again, if tonight's goal is to at least just do the shift, I think that's fine. We can do the shift. But I would like maybe in the future, in 6 months or whatever it may take, to maybe revisit these fees and say, do they need to come down or do they need to go up? Like, what is it that you guys recommend?
Yeah, we're happy to put something together for the future. We just don't have anything right now.
Thank you. So I think you addressed the latter part of this proposal was that we're just shifting the fees. I don't think we need to go over that again. I think that's what we're doing. We're moving it out of there and putting it into 311. And so then I guess at this point, do we want to make a motion to amend and make it 2 verified complaints
Yes.
instead of 3?
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Second it.
So moved.
Okay.
Okay, put it on the floor first.
Oh, yeah. Put it on the floor.
So, motion. I think there was a motion in a second. Was it?
Yes.
Well, this is just we're just putting it on the floor first. So you motioned to put it on the floor, I second.
Yep.
Okay.
Now you want to do your amendment.
Okay, so. Yeah, so we're amending the paragraph and we're gonna make it 2 violations instead of 3. The proposed there. So going from 5 down to 2.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor of the amendment? Okay, now we're back to the original ordinance as amended. And do I have a motion?
Don't need it.
Yeah.
Just to vote as
Okay,
amended.
So, any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Good.
That was helpful. Good discussion. Okay. And now we're going to move on to short-term rentals. We are going to have the consideration of creation of a new ordinance, chapter 1020, short-term rental registration, establishing a registration process, including caps on the annual number of permitted short-term rentals, amending chapter 405 zoning ordinance to add new uses, short-term rental owner occupied and short-term rental non-owner occupied, establishing where the new uses are permitted, establishing conditions and performance standards that apply, and establishing a coastal beach zone for exclusion to the short-term rental cap, an amendment to chapter 311 schedule of fees. And we have our lovely town planner.
Thank you.
Here.
Good evening, everyone. We'll share. I did put together a quick PowerPoint for this. It's a little easier to go through. So this ordinance, this is in your memos, just a recap of all the meetings that we've had. This went through quite a long process and then it was ultimately voted down in October of last year. But this proposal is a bit the same and a bit new. So there's 2 parts. There's a new introduced part to chapter 405, the zoning ordinance. So this proposal adds 2 new uses and it establishes where those uses can be permitted and it has conditions and performance standards. And then the second part is chapter 1020, the short-term rental registration ordinance. It is much like what you saw last time with a couple of changes. So I'm going to go through the chapter 405 zoning ordinance portion first. So based on feedback, I've created 2 new uses. And so the first is a short-term rental owner occupied. And then the second is a short-term rental, non-owner occupied. It's fairly clear the difference. The owner occupied does have a little bit of leeway to say that you don't necessarily have to be on site when you are short-term renting your property, but it is your primary residence. And then the non-owner occupied, this one was really important to consider because we've gotten quite a bit of feedback from our typical traditional neighborhoods that they want to make sure that the people that are buying those are actually living in them. And so those are the two big changes. So there's two new uses. And this is the use table that you all saw last time. The timing hopefully will be right that I can include the short-term rental in the bigger changes going forward in March. So the items in yellow are the two uses, and included the first 6 color categories: RF, RFM, R2, R3, R4, R4A. The owner occupied is permitted with a special exception. So I've treated it the same way that home occupations are. So the special exception process has some stipulations that you have to meet. There is a public notification process, and it's approved through the Board of Appeals. And then I've put in that the owner occupied is by right in the rest of the districts that allow residential units. So the next one, also let me clarify, the C60, that's a condition that says it's only permitted in coastal beach zone as identified. So in the coastal beach zone, and this is a little tricky because we have a lot of things going on, but we have RF zoning, we have R2 zoning. So this was the way that I could say in the coastal beach zone, as defined by council, you don't have to get a special exception. So to acknowledge that historic beach short-term rental history. And then the second use, the short-term rental non-owner occupied. This particular one, it did the same thing with the C60, the condition for the coastal beach, but it's not permitted in those typical residential districts. It's permitted in our village residential districts with a special exception, and then it would be permitted in the other zoning districts, the town and village center districts where you might have more multifamily or some different situations. But when I put this together, the hopes were really to acknowledge those concerns that we had around your traditional neighborhoods. And that's why it is at this place. But the great thing about this table is you can tweak anything and you can see across the town how it would be applied. So there are also a few performance standards, and these would apply to all situations. And the performance standards direct you to the registration process. So you have to register. And then that you can't have more than one short-term rental per single family residential lot, excluding the coastal beach zone. So this particular standard is really about prohibiting a situation where we get a proliferation of multiple homes on one lot because of state law changes for short-term rental purposes. So you can only have one. No exterior signage or any other exterior indications of the short-term rental excluding the coastal beach zone. And then the traffic generated by a short-term rental should not increase the volume of traffic. And this particular performance standard is an extra performance standard that really can be considered with that special exception process for your typical residential neighborhoods. So the second part is the registration ordinance. And again, it is almost identical to what we had before, but what I've included is the idea of a coastal beach zone. And for the purposes of this conversation, gave you a look at 2 different distances from the coastline. It was just a very scientific, mathematical way to say, what do we have a quarter mile from the coastline and a mile, to give you some framework. And that line can certainly be moved and tweaked, and I suspect it will be. It's just to give you a starting point. And so the idea of this coastal beach zone, well, this would be an area in town that short-term rentals would have to go through the registration process, but we wouldn't worry about how many there were. So they would be allowed in all of the zoning districts. They're allowed by right, no cap. Outside of the coastal beach zone, the idea is that we would establish a percentage of housing units that are outside, and we would say that would be a cap for the rest of town. So that's an option. So this table, this line, option A, is the 1 mile coastal beach zone. So We have approximately around 11,000 housing units townwide. And 1 mile from the coastal beach zone, we have 19% of our housing units, but 75% of our short-term rentals. And this is based on April of last year data dump that I received from GPCOG. A quarter a mile, 11% of our housing units and about 49% of our short-term rentals. So that 1 mile really captures the majority of our short-term rentals. And so that's why these two numbers I think are good for reference, just to get an idea. And so if you went with that 1 mile coastal beach zone and you excluded the 2,100 homes, you could say a 0.5% cap would be 44 short-term rentals, or a 1% cap of the rest would be 88. This is just throwing out some ideas for you all to consider. You know, the cap can go down, it can go up. It's math. And so this is just to give you a frame of where we're starting from. This is just a map. It's really hard to see, I think, at this scale, but the quarter mile obviously is the red line closer to the coast, and then a mile away gives you that buffer. And then the red, it's our short-term rentals that were identified in that April document. So the registration ordinance summary, it's an annual registration and renewal process. It keeps our existing accessory dwelling units. Again, it establishes this beach zone and it establishes the cap if you all decide to go forward with that. Safety inspections are required. There's an initial safety inspection, and then every 3 to 5 years. The good neighbor ordinance applies. Parking compliance is required. There would be an initial fee and perhaps a renewal fee at a different level based on if you have to get inspection or not. And then the registration would be through the town clerk, coordination with other departments, and then we have the violations, the penalties that are established. I won't go through all of these, but I did change the purpose statement. And I think the purpose statement is more about what the purpose was, about protecting traditional neighborhoods. And so the way it's written now, I think it does that a little better. So I did update that. The applicability is the same. Safety compliance is fairly simple. It's smoke alarms in bedrooms, that sort of thing. The inspections are not checking for building code compliance. They're checking for basic safety requirements. This is just a little bit more information on the safety inspections. The registration procedure, it's much like what we have for other registrations and licenses in town. Proposing a grace period again to start. Our timing would work with this to do it probably through the end of the year, perhaps if you all wanted, by the time it got approved to work. And then the violations and penalties, there's a typical fine of $100 per day for each violation included if you're operating without a valid registration. So one of the questions that we've talked about too is, what do we do with short-term rentals now that if we move forward with this and they weren't allowed, what happens? So you have two choices. You can basically, with the establishment of this new use and putting it in our zoning districts, you can say, you're not allowed, you can't register. And this would be for the non-owner occupied in those situations. Or you could define some transitional provisions. This example is tweaked a bit for us, but it's an example that Kennebunk Court used when they put their ordinance into place. They allowed for entities or people who had short-term rentals to provide proof, of a certain amount of history of renting, that they had been doing it, to be able to register. So they put in some transitional timing for that. And so that's an option as well that could be considered.
So that's to allow them to continue to operate.
Correct. Like if you moved this forward as written and you had a non-owner occupied in R2 zoning, the zoning change would, if you went with the top choice, when they come to register, we would say, I'm sorry, unfortunately, short-term rental is not allowed in R2 zoning as a non-owner occupied.
And that's how it's drafted now.
Or you could include this transitional provision that would say, okay, we are going to need 2 years worth of proof and history that you've been doing this, and it's a valid thing. It's not just something new. And then we could allow them. Those are two options. There's nuances within those options, or the second option. You could do it for a time period. You could amortize the use over a time period. But there's a few things to consider there. So as written, looking for some input overall, but really on the coastal beach zone, and then that cap idea for the short-term rentals outside the coastal beach zone, and then some transition guidance.
Okay.
And if moved forward, this would coincide really nicely with the big tables that you all saw last month. We could include that in March. And then this has to go to planning board, of course, town council. But if it were to get started, we could do the registration and initial inspection starting this May through December for a grace period. So happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any specific questions. I don't.
Yeah, I was wondering how the two distances, one is a quarter mile, the other is a mile. How did you arrive at, was a half mile? Because I live at Higgins Beach, so I know that if you're out at Spurwink, if you go a half a mile from the beach.
We looked at 4 scenarios, and it gets really, I wanted to be able to show you the percentage of homes. And so the quarter mile and the half mile wasn't a lot. This was kind of the two extremes. GIS administrator actually helped me look at all 4 scenarios, but these two I thought gave you kind of the better idea. There was no on the ground proofing or anything. These are just maps, a buffer.
Okay. Yeah, so with that, I will open this up for public comment. If there is anyone that would like to. Yep, I see that. We'll have.
Gabriel Hill, Maple Avenue. I want to say I fully support what's in front of you today. You've heard me come up here and, I had to pack a lot into 3 minutes, but I could actually look at you and smile and say thank you. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this. I just would like some clarification from Autumn. I didn't understand the second of the 2 options for pre-existing owner-occupied short-term rentals. So if that could be spoken to some more, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Denise Hamilton, 2 Rad Road. Overall, I support the proposed short-term rental ordinance and appreciate the work that's gone into it. I would encourage the committee to consider starting with a quarter mile or half mile boundary from the beaches. It's much easier to expand allowances later if things are working well than it is to scale them back if problems arise. You might also consider allowing STRs between a half mile and a mile with a special exception, providing an additional layer of review and oversight. I do not believe STRs should be permitted in residential districts or in the RF districts west of the Turnpike. STRs are more appropriately located in the beach areas where non-owner occupied properties have historically been part of the community fabric. Regarding owner-occupied units, my understanding is that this is defined as a permanent resident, even if the owner is not physically present during a transient rental. For instance, a snowbird who goes away for 3 or 4 months at a time. If someone declares a property as their primary residence, but is out of state for extended periods, that changes the neighborhood dynamic. Without an owner on site, there's less direct oversight, which can impact residential character these districts are intended to protect. Lastly, since the charter states that if a use is not expressly listed in the ordinance, it is prohibited. A grandfather clause is not necessary if STRs were never a conforming use. Instead, the ordinance could establish a reasonable period of time for properties currently operating in districts where STRs would be non-conforming to cease operations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Take one more and then we'll go online.
Hi, Steve Zamorowski, 19 Teresa Massey Lane. Thank you very much for this work. And Autumn, thank you. I support 99.2% of all of this is great. I would just and I keep agreeing with Denise on a lot of things, which is great. Owner occupied, if somebody put an ADU in their yard and rent, could they run a short-term rental out of that?
Nope.
No? Okay, because that was my concern. I think even owner occupied, I think landowners have a right to make a little money if they need to, but I think we should cap that at a number of days. 4 weeks, 28 days, 25 days, whatever it is. Because I don't think we want to encourage or allow hospitality businesses running in neighborhoods. And I would support the transition, 1 year, 18 months, a 2-year transition back to a residential property, but not shut it off right away because people need to maybe recoup some investment. Thank you.
All right, let's jump online real quick. I know she's been waiting, and then we'll get to you guys.
Yeah, you should be able to talk.
Yep. Hi, this is Sue Clow. I'm in Pine Point, and I support a lot of what you're doing. It all sounds great. I'm speaking to the coastal zone exclusion, and I really have more questions than anything else, but because I couldn't see the map very clearly, what I want to know from Autumn is the line that is drawn and the line that you're talking about, a quarter or a mile or whatever it is that strictly from the ocean, or are we including the marsh zones as well? Because down here, if you're going to go only from the ocean side over, you're going to exclude the short-term rentals that already exist on the Jones Creek Drive side and the other side of East Grand, as well as some of the things that are down on the Pine Point Road going down toward the marsh, which are short-term rentals as well. So I'm just going to recommend that we take a close look at where the beginning of the quarter, half, or full mile is so that we can make sure to include those communities that have always historically been short-term rentals. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sue. Pat?
Thank you. Good evening, Scott Townsend, 2 Acorn Lane, Realtor, short-term rental owner, and owner of a business that handles short-term rentals. So, John, welcome to the Ordinance Committee. For many of you, you already know me, and this has been going on for quite some time. I just want to start by saying again, I believe this is trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, and really thinking about the unintended consequences, which this proposal is fraught with. You may be starting to think you're solving one problem and you're going to be creating 5 or 10 more. And what's being proposed now is way more complex than what the town council denied back in October. There's too many other layers with it. So I oppose it, and so do my companies. I think if you were to move forward with something and you were going to be defining the coastal zone, I think it does need to be a mile. I echo what Sue said about the rivers, tidal areas. There are rental homes and with access to the water, that's what makes them desirable. And a mile is walking, biking distance. It's easy access, and that's really, it's not increasing traffic. I live outside of that range and I walk to the beach almost every day. The things I want you to think about as you move forward, why put a cap on the short-term rentals? I think that basically it forces it to be unfair to property owners. In theory, you could have 2 neighbors that both want to rent. One's allowed to rent, one's not allowed to rent per the cap. So one owner of the property has more rights than another owner. And for me, that's not fair. As a realtor, I advocate for ownership rights. I also don't think that people that have been renting, they should be grandfathered. If someone bought a home under the premise that they can rent and they've been legally allowed to rent for 5 years in an area, and now they're being told that they can't, you're removing home ownership rights. You're changing the rule of the game when it's already being played. If rentals weren't allowed in an area and somebody bought in there knowing that they couldn't rent, then that's acceptable. Those were the rules of the games. But when you change the rules and take away someone's right, that's not right, and I'm very opposed to it. And then just overhearing some of the talk with the cannabis, which was very interesting because it's not a world that I work within, just talking about the licensing fees and the impact on the town. And I really want you to consider what the impact and the burden is going to be on the town. If there was a registration process, which I've spoken that I'm fine with, a simple registration process, and you have to go through and fill out an application and do a safety checklist, someone should have the right to have someone come and inspect it. But if you're putting this on the town services, there's far more rental properties than there are cannabis producing properties here in Scarborough. So I think there's going to be more of a burden. And to wrap it up, there's no message, no wording about any appeal process. So if somebody is denied or their registration is revoked, there's no process for denials or non-renewal or administrative determinations. It's lacking quite a few things. So as it is, I don't support it. Again, happy to work with Autumn and the council to come up with something that is equitable for all involved. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kevin Young. I work with Scott. I actually work at HigginsBeachMaine.com and have for going on 8 years now. And I'm the rental manager for HigginsBeachMaine.com. And two of the things, I echo everything that Scott said. I do not agree with the ordinance. And in addition to that, I want to speak to two main things that I saw, first of which being the inspection process. All of our properties are inspected at least once, typically actually twice per year. And not only does it have all of the safety matters that were listed on the ordinance, there's far more actually. So that's already being done. And I've actually spoken to a number of our owners and clients that have insurance policies in place where their insurance company is coming out and also doing inspections. So not only do I feel like the inspection piece isn't necessary, but I don't think the town is fully appreciated and understood like the amount of staff time, the added staff, the added cost to do the inspections. And speaking to the 45-day window of when you register till the inspection happens, I think that is a very aggressive timeline considering the number of short-term rentals and registrations that are going to come into place. And then I think that in terms of a grace period, if there is one, it should be, I think all of that needs to be reworked. I don't think the inspections are necessary because they're already being done and it's just more work and money for the town. And the other thing I'd like to speak to is the emergency number. I think, well, first of all, I'm actually the person that handles most of the guest correspondence complaints, anything that's at Higgins Beach. So I'm hearing a lot of these emergencies that are not emergencies. Obviously, sometimes there are. If it's a true emergency, they should be calling 911, calling town services. And so I think that the 90-minute response time is very also aggressive and unfair. Speaking as somebody that's the one that's dealing with these calls, you can't, obviously, if the house is on fire, that's an emergency. You should call public services, you should call 911, and that will hopefully be faster than a 90-minute response time. We can't get a call at 11 o'clock at night that the toilet's clogged. It's an emergency. Okay, well, you have 3 other toilets in the house. Like, that's not an emergency. So I think if anything, if there is, and I think that it's important to have an emergency contact on file. But I think that maybe a time window during business hours, I can understand that. And maybe a number to call during after hours, but I think it's unrealistic to have that quick of a response time during who knows what hour it could be for something that truly is not an emergency. So thank you for your time and your work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Hamill, and I'm so grateful that this has come forward. We've needed this for a long time. I will say that I grew up in Pine Point, and the area between Jones Creek and King Street, Tasker Avenue, all those little streets, the creek, that was the year-round area. That was a real tight-knit neighborhood. That's where the Clammers, the Wormers, the Lobstermen, that's where everybody lived, year-rounders. And that's gone. It's destroyed. And that's, what you're looking at in that area is what can happen in other neighborhoods in Scarborough. And I think the half a mile or a quarter of a mile, I think it's perfect. I looked closely at the map, and I see that if you go up a full mile, you include Holly Street, Bickford Street, Snow Road, Snowberry, and Ross Road. And those have always been traditional neighborhoods, and they should remain that way. Yes, some of them actually do have ocean views or marsh views that are quite attractive, but traditionally, I mean, can't we have a traditional residential neighborhood that you happen to live on the marsh? Just the way it's always been. I would say beyond that, the one thing, talking about what the fee is going to be, when I researched this a few years ago, I looked at Old Orchard, and they do a 2-year registration. And not only that, they capture the business property tax for the town. And it's a set amount, so they don't send someone out to look at your fridge and your stove. It's a set amount based on the number of bedrooms, the number of kitchens that you have. So, and so they are picking up business property tax that the town of Scarborough is not. And they have a much bigger inventory of short-term rentals, so it is a bigger number for them, but it's something for us to think about. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. All right, should we go back online?
Katie, you're free to speak.
Did I do it?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, great. Katie Foley, 7 Acorn Lane. I would obviously echo my business partner, Scott Townsend, and some of his comments, but just wanted to add something I thought about as I looked at the maps. It hadn't occurred to me before, but this might be just something for you to all consider as you kind of debate and talk through that quarter mile versus mile. Something we hear a lot is just how expensive it is to have a summer vacation at Higgins Beach. Or Pine Point or any of our beaches, right? And what I know about prices is the closer you are to the water, the higher the price goes. So as you create whatever area you decide to ultimately create, when you restrict it smaller, you're going to restrict the number of potential rentals in that zone. So, just using basic economics, supply and demand, if you got less demand, the prices are going to likely go up. And so I think everybody should be able to afford a beach vacation. Not everybody will be able to, but that would be kind of something for you to consider, in terms of the mile versus the quarter mile. And again, all those marsh views, like those streets, it's interesting. I got to look at Autumn's map a little bit more closely. But I know for sure, like there's several off Clay Pits. There's several down, is it Winnick's Neck down at that very end there that goes right onto the river. Anyway, so just keep that in mind. We want to attract more business, more tourists, because we make a lot of money in the summer from our tourists, not less vacation business. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Hi, I'm Julie Bailey, 273 Pine Point Road. I own Bailey Realty Group, and my daughter and I own Bailey Vacation Rentals. I do appreciate everything that the town is doing in reference to this. However, I do oppose the ordinance. I would like to see a registration. I'm agreeable to that. We do a lot of business in Old Orchard Beach as well. And as far as I'm concerned, as a vacation rental owner, they do it right. They do require you to register, pay a fee, and they do a safety inspection. I think that I'm going to echo Scott with, I think we're making this way too complicated. And as a realtor, I believe people have property rights, and I think we really need to take a look beyond a mile, in my opinion. A lot of our rentals do go beyond a mile, and a lot of those are waterfront. So I think we really need to look at all of these aspects and Again, I'm agreeable to some things, but most of them I am not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. If we don't have anyone else, I will close public comment. Thank you. Good comments. Thank you, everybody. I believe you tasked us with 3 specific things. I don't know if we want to address those comments that we've received within the 3 different topics. I don't know if there's a certain topic within the coastal zone, the cap, and the transition plan that we want to take up first.
Tackle it as Autumn proposed, and we can work through it.
The first one was just establishing the zone, correct? Yep. I think I live within like a half mile of the marsh, so, and I think that was a good clarification of you're just going from the ocean.
This is from the ocean.
Yeah, yep.
This map. So this is Pine Point, and like I said, this is, there's a couple. This is the 1/4 mile line, and then the railroad tracks. That's that Holly Bickford area in here, and then Prouts Neck, then a few, and then Higgins. But even we don't have, that 1/4 mile doesn't get everything on Ocean Ave. So this is Spurwink. So the mile gets you out in this area. So again, the reason for showing you this really was about showing you the percentage of homes captured. And so I did want to make one clarification because it kind of felt like some people were thinking we were only allowing short-term rentals in the coastal beach zone. So that's the second point, but that's still, that's not what this is saying as drafted. So within that mile, we have 20% of our homes and 75% of the short-term rentals. And then the 1/4 mile, and of course you could tweak it as you wanted to. So you could, shoot, sorry. I can't draw with my mouse very good, but you could make this extend but stop here. So you capture all of Pine Point. You could extend this and capture all of this area around Prouts on Black Point Road if you wanted to. So you could definitely have a little bit of flexibility with this. This line, we would want to true it up and not make it split a property, but this is the starting point for the conversation to show. And the idea is that whatever you choose in this area, there's no limit, and you're not worried about the non-owner occupied. There's no concern with that. But in the rest of town, there are some limits perhaps, and there are some prohibitions on the non-owner occupied in certain zones.
So I mean, I would be supportive of the 1/4 mile. But then bumping it out, I think, to capture, the end of Pine Point, and then also, I mean, we can't cut Higgins Beach off halfway through.
Right.
So I don't know if we would make it follow 77, like all the way across.
Right.
I don't know if that seems reasonable. But I will say, like, especially from where I live down on Pine Point Road, there is a big distinction when you go over, to me, the railroad tracks of you are now, it's all residential. I'm unaware of, any short-term rentals there. There might be a couple scattered, but that's primary residential living. So I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I'm in support of that. Like, I think the 1/4 mile to me makes more sense in terms of no restrictions and things like that. But I agree, like, drawing the right line that makes the most sense, and I'd be comfortable going all the way up to Spurwink on the northern part, just to kind of keep it, like, it's just easier to say if it's on this side of Spurwink, you can, that side, there's conditions, and so I would support just a slight different drawing of the line that just uses some roads and covers all of Pine Point.
I agree. Spurwink acts as a good. You go away from the beach on Spurwink, you're in residential neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You go in to Higgins Beach from Spurwink, you're in vacation homes.
Mhm. You gonna draw something live for us, Autumn?
I suspect there are some short-term rentals on the non-beach side of Spurwink as well. So that might be just a consideration, given what we know exists. I think for all of the same reasons, access to the beach, relatively the same distance, if you will. So that might be an accommodation in that particular area that you was worth noting.
So this is Spurwink going along Higgins, so you can see that moving it's more about it's like about a half mile.
About a half mile.
It's about a half mile. And then if you followed the half mile, it would jog out to here. And so it might be that the half mile is your sweet spot, because a half mile puts you like right in this area, but you could exclude.
Do we need to have a mileage, or can it really just be an overlay that?
Be an overlay, but
It needs to follow property lines. So we know which
Yeah.
is in and which is out.
it's just generally,
Yeah,
on math, like I need this table and
Yeah.
the math has to math. And so
It seems like half mile is likely to capture the areas that.
Yeah.
pretty close. And then I think we can tweak that to capture or exclude, but it feels like just excluding this area on the other side of the railroad tracks at Pine Point. But then Spurwink is really the boundary.
Yeah.
The half mile might be the boundary in this area. So I could definitely, if this moves forward, I could show you a couple of different options and bigger maps
Okay.
with that in mind.
Okay. We good on that?
yep.
Okay.
Then this next idea was, this idea of a cap for the rest of town, what you would want to look at for, and it would include, non-owner occupied in certain districts that those are allowed, and it would include the owner occupied in other districts too. So it would be everywhere else.
Outside of this coastal.
Outside of this coastal beach,
Okay.
correct?
Do other towns have caps?
Yes,
Okay.
several.
Okay.
I would say I'm comfortable, especially for caps for non-owner occupied. The owner occupied one, I feel like I would be comfortable not having a cap. And the reason I say that is because I do think it is important to allow property owners to be able to, if they choose to, in order to help create some extra income or do something, like I don't have a problem with people wanting to do that. And so that's where I'm like,
So when I started this, I was going with that. And what I found that because of the way our zoning is and the fact that I put in that you can't do a non-owner occupied in those zoning districts we're trying to protect, I felt like I no longer needed to put a cap on the non-owner versus owner occupied. Because the way it's written, you can't do non-owner occupied in the districts that you're trying to protect. So then I don't know if you care about non-owner occupied in Higas Parkway or.
I do.
TBC. Okay, that was
Because-
what I was just wanting to make sure.
The reason I do is because, again, as we talk about housing and affordability, I'm worried that if we have too much non-owner occupied, it's making it harder for people to actually own
Gotcha.
homes in
Okay.
Scarborough. So that's where non-owner occupied for me is the bigger concern as it relates to capping, to make
Okay.
sure that we don't have too many of that happening around town. And owner occupied, again, I feel like the scenarios are I'm comfortable at least giving property owners the right to decide where it's allowed to be able to rent their homes occasionally if they wanted to. And I think that's important for them for affordability as well. Like I think right now we have a lot of seniors who live in Scarborough, and a lot of them are living in large homes, can't downsize, don't want to because of the fact that mortgage rates are so high right now that it's probably easier to stay in their homes. But again, if they're struggling to pay their taxes, being able to rent it out occasionally, that's the scenario in my mind that I keep coming back to, where I'm like, I don't want to limit anybody from trying to afford to stay in their homes. And so if people feel the need to do that and want to take that option, especially since we're limiting them, and places, like I feel like allowing that option in those zones to me makes sense.
Do they have to go through the appeals process?
So, let me go back to this table.
For
Do we need-
owner
yeah.
occupied in residential?
Well, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, do we need to make a decision on, in our districts, is it,
Right, we can, let's talk about the zoning. Oh, gosh, why does it keep doing this weird thing to me? Hang on. Let me share what I want to share. Let just do it this way. Okay, so right now in the residential districts, these 6 basic residential districts, it's a special exception for short-term rental owner occupied. It's the same as a home occupation. And so what you're saying is we wouldn't limit owner occupied at all with a cap because you already have to go through a special exception process and you should be able to do something with your home and.
Yeah.
Got it. The non-owner occupied would be unlimited in this coastal area. And the C60 goes with all the different zoning districts that are in that area. And I'll verify if we change the distance, I don't add a new one in. But that would be permitted in like your TVC districts. Running Hill would be a special exception. Village Residential would be a special exception. It'd be permitted in Hyannis and CPD and regional business and general business. But that is what you're suggesting we put the cap on.
yeah.
That across the
Mhm.
town. Perfect, got it. And so, if you do that and you looked at this, we can just assume for, if we're doing that half mile, then we've got what, 63% or so of our housing. So a 1% cap would look like what? 75. Am I doing my math right?
Hmm.
And so this would be the idea of trying to put that non-owner occupied cap for outside of the beach. So what number are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a magic number, but I
Right.
think if we had to start, just to start a cap, I would say, why not just say 50? And so the 50 would only apply to the permitted
It would.
areas, and because the special exception ones would still go through special.
Nope, no. So the 50 would only apply where you can do non-owner. You can't do non-owner, like Karen can't do non-owner occupied at her house. Because of the zone.
Yeah.
So that cap wouldn't apply for her. But if you had a home in TBC 2 and you wanted to do non-owner occupied, the cap would apply to you.
So I mean, when I was looking at your chart on slide 5, where it's permitted as a P, that's where we say in those places it's
Right.
50 units that we cap it at.
Yes.
And anybody who wants to go through the special exception process, would they be included in the cap if that
No.
comes through? Okay,
No. Oh, I get you. Yes, they would be.
okay,
But you would probably do the cap for all non-owner occupied.
okay.
And so, and just to give you, it doesn't need to be that high. That's why I was surprised because I know we have more short-term rentals
Yeah.
than this number. There's probably many that we don't know we have because they're privately rented and they're not showing up on Airbnb or whatnot.
Do we have a sense of how many are non-owner occupied?
When I first started looking at this, the numbers I got were around 300, but I don't know about the non-owner occupied. I'd say the majority of the beaches are non-owner
Yeah.
occupied, obviously. And that's why I think if you say, well, like if we take out this half mile exclusion, we're taking care of 60% of them.
Mhm.
So our cap can be fairly low
Yeah,
and provide enough for everyone, especially if you don't do a cap for owner occupied.
yeah. We have to find shorter ways or different ways, because I get tongue
I
tied,
know.
saying owner occupied, non-owner occupied. Yeah. So how do you guys feel about that?
I think that makes sense. I mean, especially with our housing issues right now, I think it's a good idea to put caps on the non-owner occupied. And I mean, it's ultimately, you see what Old Orchard is. I mean, that would be us if we
Yeah.
just let it go rampant. It could be all over.
Agree.
So,
We can always raise it later, so if we
Right.
see there's a lot of
Start
demand.
at 50? Okay, for non-owner occupied, and there's no cap for anyone else. And the zoning, the way it's presented, you're okay with that?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So now we're down to the last one. And the last one was how you wanted to handle existing short-term rentals that would not be in compliance with the new rules for zoning. And I think this is what, so the first option is just say you're not, no. And then the second one is we would actually include some transitional provisions like this language on this slide in the registration ordinance so that we can build in a time frame or some allowances or some sort of option. This is language that another community used
Right.
in a similar situation where they went in and they defined the use now, so now it's not allowed everywhere, but they did want to allow for transition of that.
Okay, I mean, I would support option one, which, you know, as a town council, we have the right to regulate zones. And so we want to regulate our residential zones and say, this is what it's allowed, this is what's not allowed. You know, especially because town council's never spoken to short-term rentals. This is the first time town council is saying, we are actually going to make a definition, we're gonna make a map. And moving forward, while I appreciate that there are people that have bought short-term rentals as an investment, I know that there are ways, I think, to transition them out. I would recommend, you know, giving them a year to transition. I know and they're not losing property value. You can sell your home and still make money off of it. So we're not stripping someone of that. You know, there is a legal recourse for them to recoup the money that they've put into
Yeah,
that.
it's
by-
the affordability of owning the house. Because they have the expenses associated with it, mortgage, taxes, and they counted on that revenue stream.
Right, well, that would be owner occupied.
Yeah.
And they're allowed to go through the zoning board.
Want to ask a question when we get.
So I think we should be very clear that, you know, to me, we have not ever discussed this as a council. So we are now defining it and we are going to say, this is what is allowed and this is what's not allowed. Also, the transitional provision that Autumn has up here does not solve the problems that we are dealing with. So we have short-term rentals in residential zones right now that might be able to prove this. And we're still in the same exact situation and we have not solved the problem. So I just cannot support allowing people to continue to operate in these residential zones. So I support just us changing the zone.
I just want to make sure that there is a transition period though, because like if somebody has been operating that way, that, you know, there is time for them to do something. So if that's a year or 2 years, I don't know what the time frame is, but like,
Right.
That's fair.
I want to make sure that if they've been operating that way, that they can find alternative means to either sell their property or do something.
Could include something that has 18-month provision,
That's fine.
starting from the day adoption or whatnot.
Yeah.
So my follow-up question is that, what about the owner occupied? Do we want to make them retroactively get a special exception, or would we like them to be able to show that they've been doing this? So if you're owner occupied and you're allowed now, but it's a special exception, do I need to send them all to Board of Appeals for special exception, or can they have some?
Some grace,
What do you think?
Yeah.
Grandfather, really talk about grandfathering those.
just
So it's-
owner occupied and special, that are in
Got
special
it.
exception.
Right, so it's not a grandfathering issue. We have to, since it's not a defined thing, it wasn't,
Right.
we're changing the use now. We're changing residential use renting to a short-term rental, so it's a new, so it's
Yeah.
gotta be a little bit different.
I want to maintain the residential neighborhoods. You know, coming from ZBA, that's also, I mean,
Do you want to give them the same 18-month time frame to get their special exception? Or?
Do you have a
No.
sense how many fall in that, do you have a sense how many fall in that category?
Maybe I'm just kind of pulling a number out, maybe 15?
It seems low. I was just thinking about,
Many.
just thinking about the volume of
Yeah.
activity with ZBA, you know.
Yeah.
the-
15.
In addition to the typical
Man,
work,
right.
15 more, you know, maybe not be on unmanageable, but if it's 50 more, that's a
Okay.
different
Yeah.
matter.
Should we maybe do a longer time frame to allow people in that situation to go to ZBA and just, we would have to unfortunately trickle people through ZBA and say we can only allow, I mean, we can't jam pack their agenda.
That would work really if we do the grace period till through December. We can just say, these are the rules. You have to get your special exception by December,
Right.
and then they're all set.
And the value of going through the special exception is there'll be a conversation around the particulars and the performance standards in particular.
Right.
And the neighbors get to be notified.
To make sure that it is, in line with the neighborhood and it's not detrimental to that for traffic and things of that nature.
Yeah, and I think that's what concerns me is, like, I think of the one that's around the corner for me, like, where right now it's not a problem. So if we grandfather or whatever it in, it might be a problem down the road where we're like, oh, if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't maybe be dealing with this guy who just can do whatever they want.
I lean more towards to keep it simple and just say if it really is as low as 15, that they get their license and just keep it simple. But I would like to know, like, is it 15 or is
I
it?
don't
I
have
think
to do
it's
some
gonna I
more.
think
Yeah.
people are gonna come out of the woodwork and we're gonna end up
You're-
with 50. It's honestly my concern is what's gonna happen is. So.
So they need to get the special exception. Are we okay with the idea of this December 31st grace period, and then as long as they have it by then? Would that be reasonable?
To go before ZBA before December, I think that's.
Do you want to give them
Yeah, I do too.
I don't want to stress the
18
ZBA out. We're having trouble filling some of these.
the 18 months thing?
I don't want to drive people away. Yeah, I want to give people time, also not overload
But I
everything.
would say, okay,
Can I just ask a question? I heard reference to a problem. I'm not sure if I understand the problem we're trying to solve here. And some of it may be the fear of what could happen.
Right.
Generally, things seem to be working, at least from my perspective, in terms of what complaints I'm aware of. There's, we can all think of doomsday scenarios where it's fine now, but it could be horrible tomorrow night. Under this proposal, let's assume we don't require them to go to ZBA, just as a conversation point, they're still required to be registered. We still have the ability to know what they're doing and do something about a problem.
Yeah.
So there's value in that. So just to John's point of keeping things as simple and not unintentionally overloading ZBA and
Yeah.
complicating this. I just want to put the thought in your mind that through the registration, we'll know who they are and we'll have the ability to address problems should they exist in the future.
Right. Yeah, I just feel like, the way that we handle businesses in this town is if you want to operate one in a residential zone, you have to inform your neighbors. And I think one of the things that I always did on ZBA was, we're not only trying to respect the neighbor who's before us today, but we're trying to respect the neighbor who's living there 50 years from now. And so I think, I don't know what these neighborhoods are. I could have someone just swear up and down that, their neighbors are fine with it and the neighbors don't know that that's going on, or it's someone who just hasn't been operating full capacity to that extent yet. And so I think the unknown of how many are out there and how many I think would come out.
well, what about if, well,
I mean, I would just for me, like, I live in one of the residential neighborhoods, and honestly, if one of my neighbors wanted to, which I think now we're making a special exemption, I wouldn't be too worried if they wanted to do it owner occupied short-term rental. And so again, that's just where I think this is a little bit of a compromise for me, even to make them special exemptions in the R. And so for me, I would prefer to at least let those who are doing it today, because they are doing it today. I think there has to be a burden of proof that they are doing it. So I would prefer to at least let those who are already doing it continue to do it. And then, if there is a proliferation or more, then they will have to go through the special exemption process from that point forward. So I don't know. I don't want to make it
5 years. Can we say if you've been doing this for 5 years? I'm uncomfortable with, I think, the activity that's happened in the last couple of years. And so I don't know if we can say, if you can show that you've been operating a short-term rental for 5 years. I also I'd love a bigger home in Pine Point, but I bought a house that I can afford, that I can live in. And so, are we supporting people who are buying homes that maybe they can't afford and changing a residential neighborhood? And I mean, there's a lot. And so I think that's kind of my concern is, if obviously the beach communities and people want to keep their homes and that, I understand that. But this idea of, I want to live in Scarborough, so I'm going to buy something I can't afford, but I'm going to rent it out. That's not really the use of that, of a residential zone.
Yeah.
But if you have been actively operating in a neighborhood for a lot of years and the neighbors have never complained, I just don't think going back to is enough for me, where
Yeah.
I obviously don't want this at all, but to compromise, I would say, can we go back a little farther to show?
I think the point that matters most, and maybe we just need to do the data, is like, how many are we talking about? 'Cause
We
if-
don't know. And that's what we're never going to know.
Yeah.
Right now.
Let me see if I can figure out how many there are owner occupied short-term rentals outside of the beach zone. And what about if we just waived the fee for this special exception? If you sign up, I can fast track you guys through.
Yeah.
And if you come before December 31st for your special exception, or May of next year, maybe we give you 12 months, we'll waive the fee for the people that have been doing this for a certain period of time, or that can show that.
Well, not the people. I mean, we have to send some notices and stuff.
Right. I've got to notice everybody. Once you get this boundary, then I can start to notice.
You're such a good compromiser. I can live with that.
I mean, is that seem fair that there's some sort of, I can put something together if that one
It's okay.
I'll think
Yeah.
about a little bit more. It's like
Yeah.
trying to make it easier for the owner occupied folks that are doing it now legitimately, but still making everyone aware that it's happening.
Yeah,
I get that.
Good.
I like it.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge that I appreciate all of the speakers tonight. I wish there was a way to regulate all the short-term rentals in town, but unfortunately, we're in a situation where we don't have we just right now have no way to regulate all of them. And safety has always been kind of my biggest concern, I think, I think when it came from the fire department, I think that was, their concern as well. And we need to be able to know where these people. I do hear the concern about the response time and the contact stuff. I just want to say, I acknowledge it. I don't think someone's going to lose their license over not returning a call in 90 minutes.
Strike it.
But, and I don't know, I don't know if there's some compromise we can discuss at the council level, or if it's even not an issue, but I also, I don't see it being.
This is really for our use, should we need to contact.
Correct. Yep.
If there is an emergency and we're called, we're attending to that.
Yep.
And we're not calling for a plug toilet, but if there's a noise complaint or other things that we're not capable of attending to, but the property owner should be. So it's for our purpose, not for the short-term renter.
Oh.
I presume there's other communication systems that you have in place for those sorts of things.
Yep.
Where the trash bags.
Mhm.
Yep. Okay. Did we cover it all?
I believe so. Yep.
I think we've got some redrafting
Yeah.
though, just to
Because I don't
make sure
know
we
if there's any
capture.
moves or anything happening here. I think
Yeah.
we're. Okay.
Can we though, before, like, must we do an actual inspection, or can we get a testament from the person that they are
We
meeting
can.
the requirements?
It's up to you.
Well, the people in Massachusetts, they faked their inspection checklist and people died. So you're not gonna get me to go back down.
But
that road.
that's on them for doing that,
But
right?
that's also reflects badly on that town for not doing in-home inspections and relying on.
But if these are all existing homes, isn't part of the inspection process for when homes go in that they have
When
to?
they're originally constructing,
Yeah, so
and rules change.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this was.
they all have to have smoke detectors, right? Like that hasn't changed.
No, I think
Clearly, I
they
mean,
need to have the inspection.
Yeah, what's been proposed, and we can have fire chief back, and I recommend we do, so you can get their final input, but he's intending to use quite a bit of his staff. It's not just all John Brennan doing these. And he made a pretty strong statement that it would be important for him to get his staff inside the four walls to kind of get a visual. But that they're willing to limit what they're looking at. And it's not a full, compliance with building code. It's very specific life safety things.
Yeah, just looking for the fire extinguisher and the smoke detectors.
Yep.
Every
Get listed.
homeowner will benefit from the fire
I
department.
mean, that's,
It's
we
a
all,
professional eye.
well, and all of our other transient housing has inspections. So the inns, motel, hell, like they all have these inspections. And so for me, all of the visitors to Scarborough have the protection of knowing the fire department's
Yeah.
been in there. And so I just, that's me, is I want people to come to Scarborough and know that they are safe. There's been an inspection. I mean, especially the older homes, like, you know, they're older, but I know that there's a smoke detector and I know that they have the fire extinguisher. Those are the things. And I know the fire department was very adamant
Yeah.
about that.
Okay, I'll cave on that one.
All right. Okay. I think we did it.
Thank you.
So next steps on this, is it gonna come back to us at our next meeting as like a revision based on what we discussed?
What was your, I know you had a timeline.
I would think we would come back.
Are you coming back to us or are you going to the council?
I prefer to go to council so I can keep it within, your next meeting is my 20th anniversary and I don't want to hang out with you guys.
Well, no, I also feel like this is a council. decision.
No.
I feel like we've given Autumn enough direction that I personally want to get the council involved at this part. This is a very big discussion. I feel like we've given you enough direction.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
You feel, so
My,
March.
my preference would be to come back here, but I don't wanna mess with Autumn's 20th anniversary. I just think we wanna give people, I just don't wanna rush this without giving the public more time, so maybe it's more a process question for when it comes to council, like how we make sure we're not doing first read, public hearing, second read right away, that can we bake in some time between the process to allow for as much.
Yeah, at this
public
point, it's not gonna be on your meeting next week on the 18th, so it would be the first meeting in March would be the earliest, and we can choose to push it even further than that if you wish.
I'm just thinking just being able to give the public, because we talked a lot, we were given options, now we have a proposal. It would be good to give the public time to understand the proposal before the council does the first reading.
Would it be appropriate for me to revise the proposal and put it on the short-term rental webpage?
That's what I was
Or-
thinking.
Yeah,
Or is that, I know it's a little bit out of the norm.
Yeah, I guess the drafting is gonna come down to you. I'm a bit uneasy with the breadth of and substance of some of the changes you gave tonight. I would feel more comfortable providing a complete draft, getting your final input on that, but I don't want to impose. That's the normal process that I would be most comfortable with.
to come back to ordinance or to,
Well,
Yes, and maybe we can talk about an accommodation, change the date.
yeah, maybe we change the date to accommodate Autumn's schedule.
I'd support that.
Is that okay?
And then if we could still do it, like if we could do it in early March.
I'm free every
2 or 3
Saturday
weeks
night.
away,
Yeah, like mid-March meeting.
or just whatever works. Like I'm happy to change the
Yeah.
schedule to do.
Let's find a
Yeah.
time.
Earlier in the day, I mean, I just don't want to hang out with you guys.
If we make it,
Oh, that's
no,
good. Well, that's.
Is that an option to do it in the afternoon? I mean,
Yeah,
I feel like I'm really overstepping.
Before-
rules here.
I can do it earlier in the day.
I can check my work schedule, and if I can make it work, we can make it work. If we make this just like a single
Single item.
action,
Yeah,
Right.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now my husband really has to show up, right?
yeah,
Right? He's gonna have the council come down on him.
he has to come to it. We want him to, we want to grill him.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, we'll find a date for that.
Okay.
Do that. So our future meeting and agenda items, future meeting agenda item is short-term rental. I know, is Angela gonna be coming back with the traffic safety recommendations?
Yes.
That's for
For
March
March.
as well?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Anything else? That so far? Okay.
That's good.
just in terms of timing, the cannabis changes you made, I think we can turn that around for next meeting. The one thing I'll say is I'm gonna, with your permission and consent, I'm gonna hold back the fee schedule piece. Only because there'll be fees associated with short term. I don't want chapter 311 in front of council continuously. You just concluded a boatload of changes last week. So just to be efficient on your time, I'd like to just hold that back to let short term maybe catch up with it and do them all at once.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. Motion,
So moved.
A second.
all in favor? We are adjourned.
We are adjourned.